Yeah, g'day Heathers and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel. Now you might remember that Luke made me this beautiful tramming tool for my mill, and I'm not going to leave such a beautiful tool just unprotected lying around in the shop. So come and join me in the wood shop and let's make a box for it. Now to make a wooden storage box I'm going to need some wood. Luckily I've got a fair bit of quite nice cherry left over from previous projects. Some of it's already been planed to thickness and milled, so I've got a variety of different bits. Maybe I can work a bit of Quila into it as an accent. Now some of you might not have seen my video on this tramming tool which Luke made for me. I'll put a link up here in the top right to that video. So if you go and watch that video, I'll go and watch Steve Ramsey's video on how to make a simple box, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. So here's the completed design work for this box. Inside dimension of 285 by 145 millimeters, and the height's going to need to be a bit over an inch. Well, after going through all the little bits and pieces, there was nothing that was really what I was looking for, so let's mill up some new wood. Just put on my wood rated blade. I think my wood cutting blade's 3 teeth per inch. So how many times do you think I'm going to set up a temporary ripping fence before I finally actually make one that I can just easily adjust to do the job nicely? Okay, since I faked the design a bit to make it end up exactly 300 by 160, and I want to bookend grain my top and bottom pieces, that means I need exactly 80mm wide strips. Rather than strip off 4 lengths and then have to thickness each of them to 80, I'll take them down to 80 now and then rip. Hey, last week I mentioned that turbine disc dovetails are normally EDM machined, but I got some feedback from a couple of different viewers, and also I confirmed with one of my colleagues at an engine manufacturer that they are normally broached. I decided to leave just about 0.5 millimeter for final cleanup. Cuts nice and parallel. Just need to adjust my temporary fence again so that I can rip off 4 boards out of this. In my shop, effective dust collection is more based on accuracy than anything else. So now that they're milled up, it's just time to join the tops together. Put a bit of tape on that board just so it won't stick. Well, my whole table saw setup's kind of half-assed. It's really just a track saw upside down, and this adjustment's quite difficult. My whole table's not that accurate, as is the sled, so maybe I should start saving up some Patreon money and actually buy a decent table saw. Next up, I need to rip my side pieces to width. And then once again, I made a precisely dimensioned drawing showing exactly what I need. Then it's just a matter of adjusting my fence to the right width and then doing a test cut. That looks pretty good, so after this that'll give me a couple of licks with the plane to then take the wood down smooth. Now the next feature is this rebate around each edge which the lid's going to sit into. So I've set it up, done a test piece, let's do the main ones. Well, that went well, so the next feature is this lip here. That feature is supposed to be 10mm, so I've obviously put the kerf on the wrong side. When I made this saw sled, now I thought I'd made it nice and square, but when I do a test cut, it's not square at all. I really don't have time to remake the sled, or more to the point, remake the mount for the saw on the table, which may also be the issue. I think I'll just stick a shim in place and move it around until I get a nice square cut. Let's switch the arrow to the other side. Okay, well that was obviously too thick. Now I've got a thinner shim. Now, if any of you would like to assist me in getting a decent table saw, please join Patreon or YouTube members, or maybe just throw me a bone through PayPal. Any assistance is greatly appreciated to save me a lot of time with this setting up. Next, I need a stop block at exactly 30 centimeters. So now I can cut the long sides. The next thing I'm going to do is make up a quick finger joint jig. Now I'm going to use thin fingers the width of the saw blade. It's going to be fine for this application. So first I need to just do a cut. And then next I'm going to need a thin slither of timber that fits that slot. So about 2.8. Well, I'm out of isocyanate glue, but this is not a highly stressed component, so I'll just use Uhu. Now, if I understand the instructions I saw on the internet, this tab needs to be exactly one same spacing away from the blade. So if I space it like that, that should get me pretty close. Well, I screwed up there. The guys who do this sort of thing on YouTube always make it look really easy, but as you can see, one, I flipped it wrong so they're both the same alignment. Two, I wasn't terribly careful about how I held the thing, and the spacing's not exactly perfect, and therefore it doesn't really want to go together at all. Okay, second test cut. Is it just me, or that blade must be leaning over, or I'm holding the work wrong, and it's still pretty tight. So if it's too tight, it needs to be moved inwards. Well, after a bit of playing around and adjusting, that seems to be about as good as I can get it, and that's pretty crappy. I think it's got problems with the stability of the whole system. It's probably a bit too much slop in the saw guide. I guess the other major accuracy killer is guiding the crosscut sled off the edge of this table, when this table was made from the old boxing timber which was used to box off a concrete wall in my house. You know, when you're only dealing with a 2.7mm blade, this slop is probably a quarter of that travel. So I'll have to have a think about how I'm going to do that. Alright, new machine day. I got a saw. I guess I'll need to do a full review on this, but first I'll get a bit of experience with it. It's time to get on with the box joints I was planning all along. Now luckily I was going through my stuff and I found that my mate Jörg had given me a pair of matching 210mm blades with, I think it's 48 teeth, and there was an extra spacer ring, so I was able to mount two blades together. And while I was at it, this is just really quickly bodged together out of some of the old parts. I don't even think I've got the slot in the middle, so I use this sled for doing my box joints. Alright, now I'll just set my blade height just a smidgen higher than the thickness of the wood. That looks about right. And cut a slot in a piece of scrap, and that's going to be my jig. It's actually the jig I used before. Next up I need to set this up. This is I put this through the planer, so it should be all the same thickness. So here's the first look. I got the alignment wrong. The dovetail's also a bit too loose. I need to move it out, so I'll just clamp another piece of wood here as a backstop. Loosen this one. Put in a 2/10mm feeler gauge. Maybe that's too much, but we'll give it a start. Now I'm getting quite a lot of chip out here on these little dovetails. I'm really not that happy with them still. I want this job to look nice, so I think I'm going to change direction and do a 45-degree bevel edge, glue them up 45 degrees, and then just put a single little reinforcing bit across the corner. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, I think that'll look a lot nicer. Okay, I've set up a stop at this end so I can get the pieces the same length. You idiot. It needs to be mited the other way. I quickly whipped up a replacement piece for the one which I cut the wrong way. Man, this goes really fast on a nice saw like this. That really didn't take long at all, probably 10 minutes max. Back to where I was. Now I need to do the same thing on the short sides. I can kind of see why people put tracks on their sleds so that you can easily set a stop. Probably goes a lot faster. Alright, let's get this glued up. Doing this fold up with tape works really well. Right, that's now dried. Now the next thing I'm going to need to do is to size the lid and the base. At the moment the base is only very slightly oversized, but the lid is quite a bit wider. Right, let's see how square this crosscut sled actually is. I'll start off well off my target line and see how straight it cuts. Certainly looks like a nice square corner. I would say that that cut is squarer than the line was. And when you consider the line was drawn with a wooden frame that was only jigged up with sticky tape, that's not that unsurprising. I just need to sneak up on this until I get this length right. Okay, that seems to fit quite nicely. Now, just to make sure this doesn't fall apart the first time I put the heavy tool in it, I'm just going to put a couple of reinforcements into the corners. For that, I'm going to need a little jig. This kveila is a nice contrasting colour, so I'll use that. Now for the final glue up, start with those corner reinforcements. I don't have the handle for my Japan saw because my daughter borrowed it. Okay, now we get to the really nerve-wracking part, and that's cutting in just enough to separate the top and the bottom. I've set the blade to cut 4mm deep. Okay, looks like that depth is quite good. Just a very light edge in there still. Oh yeah, that cuts super easily with no pressure. But the other side, pretty much the same. Well, I screwed up the dimensions in there somewhere, or the accuracy, such that the top doesn't really fit down over the bottom properly. I get a bit of a gap. I'm really not sure where all the errors creeped in. such that I kind of lost that lip that I was hoping to get all around there. Checking with one of the test pieces I made. Yeah, a bit over 15.5 down to the bottom. And another piece for the lid. Now, while I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get quite the nice sit-down lid that I was hoping for, eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that Luke didn't just make one of these tramming tools for me. I know he made one for himself as well. So I also made a second box. And this is the nicer one, so this will be the one I'll be sending to Luke. Let's go and cut that one open. Oh man, I obviously wandered slightly with the saw blade here. Damn. I've got the lid fitting quite nicely, but I've got a bit of a gap, so just need to plane this down a little bit, this lip. I'm not going to overdo it. I mean, it's going to stay with a wee bit of a gap. Maybe I can minimize it a little. So I think the best way to hold down the felt will be hot glue. Now the last part still to do in this is to do the finishing. And my favourite finishing for, well, most woods is French polishing. I really like working with shellac. Good timing to be doing this, so I can go and watch the MotoGP qualifying while I'm French polishing. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My attempt at a really nice storage box for this beautiful tool which Luke made for me. Now, unfortunately, there are a few little errors that have crept into it. I guess if I wanted it to be perfect, I would have welded it. Thanks very much, Luke, and to everybody else, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.